Okay, well, thanks to Rodri, Gab, and Graham. But now I've got Augie and Rob back because we're going to talk about the second coming of Cristiano Ronaldo at Manchester United. Now, we have a phrase in Spanish that says amores repetidos son errores repetidos, meaning repeated exes are repeated errors. You don't go back to your ex, but Cristiano Ronaldo did in terms of going back to Manchester United. And why not? By then, the relationship was still such a good one, but Augie, he almost, or what we were made to believe is that he almost didn't go. He almost went, dare I say, to the crosstown rivals, Manchester City. Was that actually on the table?
Yeah, I mean, it's a real sliding doors moment, isn't it? If he'd gone to City, then who knows how both, they signed Erling Haaland a year later, so who knows, how things would have played out. But yeah, the reality is
Ronaldo was a product of United, you could say. And we know how much his relationship with Sir Alex Ferguson meant, as we discussed.
Yeah, but the thing is, City were desperate for a striker that year, and Pep was exploring any possibility to get someone to score goals, and they did speak, and City were certainly making moves. I'm still not convinced it would have happened. I'm still not sure he would have worked out as a Pep player, but that Ronaldo was talking to City, and I think that shows, let's take the romance out of this, that he was prepared to go to Man City. So he was prepared to go to Manchester City despite the fact he loves Man United. So let's not forget that. But the reality
that was 100%.
Yeah.
He was considering it.
Yeah, of course he was. But the thing is, we have to just go back a bit in time here. So he left United in 2009. Right from 2013, United were trying to sign him back. So that was Ferguson's last year. They played Real Madrid in the Champions League, I think maybe a quarter-final or round of 16, I can't quite remember now. But so that day, Ferguson, that was his first return back to Old Trafford, and Ferguson had requested that when they read the teams out, they would go against the usual tradition would be opposition first, then the home team with the second. He said to the PA guy at the stadium, I wanted to read Real Madrid out second and leave Ronaldo to the last, because Ferguson felt he could get into Ronaldo's head. And so basically he read the team out, and it went Modric and Ramos, etc. And right at the end he said, and welcome back to Old Trafford, our very own magnificent seven, Cristiano Ronaldo. And there's a huge ovation. And the part of that was, first of all, Ferguson wanted to kind of put him off his game, but also they were laying the steps down to get him back. They felt if they could show Ronaldo how much he was loved at United, at the time he never quite got that affection at Real initially. And they wanted to show Ronaldo that this is your home, come back in. And the ovation he got was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. Anyway, the summers passed and David Moyes came in, tried for Ronaldo. 3 or 4 summers passed, Ed Woodward was desperate to get Ronaldo, because we know at United at that time were a club that wanted big names. And when the chance came around again, when he was leaving Juventus, United had no strategy in place to get Ronaldo, but because he was going to go to Man City, it was felt that we can't allow this to happen. Yeah. And that was somebody at United told me that we can't allow this to happen. Well, you could have realised it was a bad idea, but you let it happen. So almost like, the whole drinking the Kool-Aid moment, let's get Ronaldo back. So they make the move for Ronaldo, and it's done. Rio gets involved, Rio Ferdinand gets involved, Sir Alex Ferguson gets involved, the big player, please come back, Cristiano, don't get to Man City. He came back, and then the rest is history, as they say.
The rest is history indeed, Rob. And his debut actually wasn't that bad. It almost seemed like the stars had aligned and we were going to see pretty much the second coming as good as the first.
Well, yeah. I mean, thinking back, that 4-1 win over Newcastle on the day that he made his second debut was probably about as optimistic as I've ever felt Old Trafford in the last 10 years, probably. Yeah. Because United had done quite well under Solskjaer. They'd shown that they were kind of moving in the right direction. They'd started to make moves in the transfer market that fans thought they should be doing, signing likes of Rafael Varane, Jadon Sancho. There was a feeling at the time that Ronaldo might be the last piece of the jigsaw, and that he could still score goals in the Premier League to get United and turn him into title challengers. There was a little bit of debate about whether he could still do it in the Premier League. Obviously, it's a much more competitive league than Serie A. He'd done really well with Juventus and carried on scoring goals, but there was a question about whether he could do it in the Premier League. Turns up at Old Trafford to play Newcastle and scores twice and kind of makes all those doubts disappear straight away. That first season, I mean, I think he exceeded most people's expectations, really, given that the stage of his career he was in. Obviously, the problems with Ronaldo and his second stint at Old Trafford came after that.
No, I was going to say that it was a good first season, but you could argue that he halted United's progress.
I was waiting for this. I was like, let's have someone bring us back down to earth.
But I think he destabilised Marcus Rashford's development. I think Marcus Rashford at that point was growing into a role where he was the United main guy at United, and then obviously Edinson Cavani.
Were the players told to just kind of Just give everything to him.
No, not so much that, but the way that Ronaldo played, I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has basically said, there you go, there's Ronaldo, make it work. And Ole was just about building a team that was, Cavani had done well in his first season, Rashford was developing, and then Ronaldo comes in and plays for the middle. Rashford has to play out of position. Cavani loses interest, loses his shirt number. I think he has to go up to number 7. And as well as Ronaldo did on his own, the team didn't do well.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm as big a Ronaldo fan as anybody. I think he's a brilliant player, brilliant professional, but he did actually, it was all about the noise off the pitch and the kind of the showbiz with that. It wasn't a football move. It was a bad idea football-wise. And it did kind of say, like I say, it knocked Rashford out of his development. I don't think Rashford's ever been the same player since. He had that brief spell after the World Cup, but his progress was halted and diverted by Ronaldo coming back. And that is the kind of the consequence of the move.
So Solskjaer's big thing when he came in, because he came in after Jose, was to alter the mood around United. It was all about togetherness, team. There wasn't any particular superstar, but the team as a whole were moving in the right direction. And then he's almost forced to kind of drop Ronaldo into this. And Solskjaer has given quite telling interviews since he was sacked. And he's asked the question, do you think it was the right idea to bring Ronaldo back? And all he can say is, at the time, they didn't know what else to do, that they thought that they had to do it. Now, that's not him saying we had to do it because he's such a fantastic player. They had to do it because there was a possibility they thought that he might go to City, and they wanted him back. And it did initially give everyone a lift. But then Solskjaer gets sacked in November. The team aren't playing particularly well. And then you bring Ralf Rangnick in, who wants to play this kind of high-energy, high-pressing football. And the one thing Ronaldo, at his age, at that time, did not want to do is press the ball. And then you're left with this massive conundrum then about what you do about Ronaldo. Can you pick him? Can you teach him to do something else at that age? Do you leave him out? And how do you deal with the storm around him every time he does or doesn't play? And it just became this huge soap opera. And it was a soap opera from that point all the way until the end of his second spell at United.
Well, you mentioned the storm around it, which is nothing new. I'm sure Portugal definitely can say a thing or two about that as well. But what about the stories, Augie, that we heard from, younger players, even on United's senior team and even in the academy, when they would see him, in the gym, it made them want to work out more. They would see what he was eating. Obviously, he eats a lot healthier than everyone, and they would suddenly not opt for a dessert option. They would suddenly not opt for the potatoes. They'd get some quinoa. I don't think they had eaten quinoa at Carrington in years. But that kind of impact, was there any weight to that? So at least that United would have said, well, see, this is another reason why. Because we heard about it similar when Zlatan was there, that just his presence in the dressing room, his aura, it helped the players. And respectfully, of course, to Zlatan, and I'm a massive Zlatan fan. But when we talk about auras and presences at Manchester United, it's hard to find bigger in recent times too than Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah, I think second time around, I don't think that was the case for Ronaldo. I think, in the best possible way, he's quite a selfish player. It is about himself, and you can never question Ronaldo's commitment or dedication, but I don't think he was doing things for the benefit of the team at that point. And I think the whole young player element, I'm not quite sure, is it a case then? I think there was some of the senior players were kind of unhappy about how he was indulged in some of the things he would say. I remember once being told that he'd asked Solskjaer to make the team quicker, get the ball to him faster, and Ollie denied it at the time, but it was true. But that was, again, classic Ronaldo. Get the ball to me, get the ball to me. Not about the team mechanics, So I think that his selfishness came at that worst possible time when the club was falling apart with the Solskjaer situation, Rangnick coming in, players unhappy. He was almost like the catalyst of that, because, again, he couldn't lay anything against him professionally, but because he was quite a selfish player, it was all about him. He kind of enabled the rest of the team to become selfish and kind of individuals. So it was just a bad move all around the second time around.
It was just the instability of it all, I think. I think that the problem that United fans have got with it is that at the time that he joined United for the second time, that there was a feeling of kind of stability for the first time in a long time under Solskjaer. That we're moving in the right direction, but then you get a season where things don't go your way. You change your manager. Ronaldo's presence there seemed to kind of contribute to this kind of, uncertainty around the club, and it just didn't help. And it made it really, really tough for Ralf Rangnick. I mean, Ralf Rangnick, I think, a lot of United fans have looked at what he's said since and thought that he was talking quite a lot sense about the problems at Man United. But really with Ronaldo, he never really stood a chance because Ronaldo was such a big personality. He was kind of in charge of that dressing room. There were stories at the time of Ronaldo going to Ralph Rangnick and saying, I know that you play with one up front, but I think we should play with two up front because that would help me. And Rangnick saying, well, no, because my style of football is to play with one up front, and maybe sometimes you're going to have to sit on the bench. And Ronaldo kind of enlisting senior players like Bruno Fernandes and Paul Pogba to come with him into Rangnick's office to say, we all think that you should be playing two up front because that's what suited Ronaldo at the time. And that was the kind of thing that Rangnick was having to deal with at the time. And it just made his job, and it's hard for an interim manager anyway, but when you're dealing with issues like that on the side, particularly when it comes to someone like Ronaldo, it made it near impossible.
Well, he did make it clear, as Cristiano Ronaldo does, that he did want to leave when things started to go sour when obviously he kicked off with Rangnick as well. But, Augie, were you surprised that nobody was kind of in the market for him?
No, because nobody's in the market because nobody's in the market for when he signed for United. The City thing was almost a panic move, and United signed him as a panic buy. Back in, what year was it, 2021, he was a panic buy. It was panic interest for two clubs, and 2 years later, or a year later, it was the same. So, he ended up in Saudi Arabia because, as we know, there was no look. He was on. Ronaldo cost a lot of money in terms of wages, and the fee wouldn't have been so much of an issue. But no, I'm not surprised because, I mean, how old was he then? 37, 38? No, he went to Saudi Arabia, and they saw in the World Cup in 2022 how he wasn't particularly pulling up any trees. So United just gave him a one last chance of growing a big league, and it didn't work out.
And it made Erik ten Hag's his first season particularly quite tough because Ten Hag comes in after Ralph Rangnick, again someone who wants to play this kind of high pressing, high intensity football. Ronaldo's still there. That they come to an agreement where Ronaldo is allowed to leave that summer if there's interest. There's a little bit of talk about Chelsea, I think, at one point, but nothing really materialised. In fairness to Ronaldo, that same summer he has a personal tragedy, which means that he can't go on the pre-season tour. But Erik ten Hag comes in. It's meant to be all about this new manager and this new direction, new era at Old Trafford. I was sat in his first press conference on the pre-season tour, and the first 10 questions are all about Ronaldo. Is he staying? Is he going? What are you going to do with him? How are you going to make him play your style of football? Can he play your style of football? And he seemed to just kind of drown in it a little bit, and it put Ten Hag on the back foot almost immediately. And then we saw that it unravelled, so quickly after that it early on in 2022, before the Qatar World Cup, that Ronaldo was giving that interview with Piers Morgan where he completely slams United. Ten Hag tears down the entire club, talking about the facilities aren't good enough, the manager isn't good enough. And it was a really kind of sour end to a pretty forgettable period in Ronaldo's career. One that, at the time felt like it could have been this kind of fantastic move if it had been the last piece of the jigsaw, but it just unravelled so quickly and it became really, really messy by the end.
And the thing is, a lot of things that he said in that interview have been borne out to be right. Ten Hag wasn't the guy.
I was going to say, did he lie though?
The facilities. But the problem is, it was his selfishness again, that it was all about him. If he had gone to United and said, like, I'm going to be your last 20-minute guy, the guy that comes off the bench after 70 minutes, he'd be brilliant at that. But he always wanted to start games, and he was too old.
But can you blame him? It was Cristiano Ronaldo. He's a perfectionist.
Yeah, but it can't all be about you, or it can't all be about him. If you're a team player, which he isn't really, you have to kind of, play for the team. What I mean is that he has to kind of allow himself to see the bigger picture. His age means that he's not as mobile as he was. Why not be a guy that comes in after 70 minutes or an hour when the opposition team are tiring? They'll get you goals. But he wasn't interested. He wanted to be all about him. So that's why it didn't work at United, because he couldn't, you want to see Rangnick saying we need two up front. Well, if he saw that would be detrimental to the team. You don't say it. So I tell you what, we'll put Marcus Rashford through the middle, and when he tires, or the last 20 minutes when you need an extra body, I'll come on. But no, that's why he went to Saudi Arabia, because he wants to play. Fine, if you want to play, no problem, go and play. But don't expect one of the biggest clubs in the world to change everything to suit you when you're 38, 39.
He also became something that I don't think that he would have stood for in his prime. There's an episode where against Spurs at Old Trafford where Ten Hag tries to bring him on late in the game and he refuses to come on. Now, in his prime at Real Madrid and Man United in his first spell, he wouldn't have settled for that from a young player, telling the manager, I'm not going to come on, because his demands of players were so high, and he became, as Mark said, he became completely focused on himself and suggesting things, as Mark has said, that were detrimental to the team, because he was chasing these individual goals and these individual prizes that he just became obsessed, I think, with himself and his own kind of targets, and he didn't really care whether that affected the teams he was playing in or not.
I think as well, just in his defence, give a bit of a kick in.
I was ready to jump in and defend him as well.
the Man United that he left was stock full of superstars and great players and winners. And he'd gone back to a club that was not full of winners. It was full of players that were not good enough to play for Man United. And it must have killed him to look around the dressing room thinking, you lot aren't good enough. But a lot of them probably don't care as much as they should do. Surrounded by players that were, picking up easy money because... And the whole mentality of the club had changed. It had become a soft club, a weak mentality club, and that wasn't what he left behind. So he'd have gone there thinking, this isn't me, this isn't the environment I want to be in. But he didn't help, he didn't help it himself, but I can understand why he was frustrated because it wasn't what Ronaldo was all about.
Part of the problem is, though, that we talked about in his first spell at Man United, that transformation.
Yeah.
Transformation from boy to man and becoming this kind of superstar. In his second spell at United, he should have been more aware of the transformation back down from superstar to kind of bit part player. Now, he is far more experienced in football circles than any of the three of us. So if we can see it, then he should have certainly been able to see it. That he should have been able to, like Mark says, he should have been able to see that if he wanted to thrive in that Man United, or even at that level with another team, that he had to accept taking steps back down the ladder from going all the way up to the top to being the main man every single week to coming back down. Because the one thing that Ronaldo can't defeat is time and age.
Yeah.
You can do as much time in the gym as you want. You're always going to get older. You're always going to get slower. You need to accept that, things don't stay the same forever. And he should have been able to be aware of that. And what we saw in that second spell at Man United is that he wasn't aware of it. And that's part of the motivation, as Mark again has said, that's why he ends up in Saudi Arabia, because he still wants to be the main man. He can't handle being a bit part player. It doesn't matter about the level he's playing at. It's about how big an impact he is having. And it's like, it's like the big kid, playing with the younger school kids in the playground. I don't want to play with my own age because they're all the same level as me. I'm going to go and play with the 10-year-olds because I'm going to score 5 in every game. That was the kind of mentality that he began to have. And I think the way that it all ended at United in that second spell tarnished his legacy a little bit at the club, and not taking anything away from what he did and achieved in his first spell. But the way that he left at the end, I think, has really affected how Man United fans will remember him. And it's telling that he had a song, Viva Ronaldo, that they sang in his first spell. They sang it all the way through his time at Real Madrid and Juventus, and sang it again when he came back to Man United. The lyrics of that song now have been changed to Viva Garnacho. You don't sing Viva Ronaldo anymore, it's Viva Garnacho. And that tells you everything you need to know about how Man United fans view him.
They'll probably have to change the lyrics again soon, but that's the discussion for another day. Augie.
Yeah, I just think one thing I'd say about how it ended the second time, when he left in 2009 and the years after that, people within United spoke him with such affection. They loved him, how down to earth he was. And, I saw it myself. I did a press conference at the World Cup in South Africa in 2010. He'd left United a year earlier, and the Portuguese press officer was saying, no more questions. And there was a few of us that were actually on the Manchester patch in Port Elizabeth watching this game. And Ronaldo said, no, these are my friends from Manchester, take a question. So that's his kind of humility, despite the fact he's an arrogant superstar. He has got quite a humble side. But when he came back the second time, that was not so much there. And I think by the time he left, whereas in 2009 people missed him and regretted him going and had this affection for him, the second time they couldn't wait to see the back of him because it was a problem. So I think that tarnished his reputation to that extent whereby, like Rob said, they don't even sing his name anymore.